I was doing math homework, geometrying, when I discovered I wasn't having as much fun as I wanted. I drew a circle and thought, wow, this shape is incredible. I wish all my entertainment was shape-based. Did you know video games are made of shapes? Many games use smaller shapes to make up bigger shapes, but this amount of shapes is too much for my small brain to handle, so I wanted to look for games that are about simple shapes. I'm looking at games where you play as shapes, that revolve around shapes, where you move shapes. The shapelier, the better. What better way to do that than to look at the early days of gaming? Pong. It's so fun. You pong here, you pong there, and ooh, it's so exciting. Pong is a game where you control a line and aim to hit a square into your opponent's side of the screen. Now this is the kind of shaping I'm talking about. A rectangle, a square, some number-shaped shapes. This is where it's at. As simple a game as it is, it's still fun to kill a few minutes with it. Breakout, the lonely man's Pong. Instead of playing against another rectangle, this time you rally a ball back and forth against a breaking wall. This and Pong put analog controllers to great use. You can't really replicate the fluidity of your movement with the left and right joystick. You need something you can zoom across the screen with, like a dial or a paddle controller. Ever wanted a gerrymander? Checks? Kicks? Kicks. Kicks is an arcade game by Taito where you control a cursor as it moves across the screen with the goal being to capture as much area as you can. Watch out though, because this cool looking thing is the Kicks. It will travel around the screen and try to stop you from having fun. The area you take over will slowly close in the Kicks, but start to make it easier to be caught by it. I first played this game on my 3DS back in 2011 when it was like one of 3 virtual console games available. I think I only ended up playing it twice before going back to Link's Awakening and Super Mario Land. I love Tetris. This has to be one of my favorite game franchises. You have these 7 shapes called tetraminos made of 4 squares, and all you have to do is line up 10 in a row to make that line disappear. As you clear more lines, the pieces start falling faster. It's simple to understand, but oh boy can you get really good at this game. Tetris started as a computer game in 1984, but became more widely known with the NES port and Game Boy port. Look at this. This is perfection. Save for some randomizer changes and rotational shenanigans, the game has relatively remained the same for decades. I wonder what a modern Tetris game is like. What if shapes were in 3D? Marble Madness is an arcade platformer? You control a marble and roll down isometric courses within a time limit. It's like Monkey Ball, but no monkey. It's also really short too. There's only a few levels and can be beaten in about 5 minutes. Don't be too speedy though, because if you fall off a ledge, you crack and you have to respawn.
Fatality.
What if pool, but on the moon? Lunar pool is a mix between pool and mini golf in that you're hitting the balls into holes like pool, but the shape of the table is different in each level. You are this white ball, so shapes are confirmed. The first level starts off like a regular pool game, but the next level is where the mini golf aspect begins. In this level, for example, now you have corners against the holes you can bounce balls off of. Each stage gives you different boards and starting positions to play. One fun aspect about this game is you can change how much friction affects the balls, making it play like there's too much gravity, or zero gravity. Don't go too wild though, because you can end up having to wait a few years for the balls to stop moving, if at all. Let me just do something real quick. Yeah, that checks out. I think I have a thing for puzzle games. Columns is a match 3 puzzle game where you line up gems to make them disappear and then gravity takes over and you can start combos, kind of like Puyo Puyo. Columns is one of Sega's more prominent puzzle games. It found a port onto most of its systems and even saw some non-Sega console ports like on the Game Boy Advance and PlayStation 2. This is a good one to try out if you enjoy these single-screen arcade puzzlers. The best game. PICROSS is a puzzle game like a mix between Crosswords and Minesweeper. You see these numbers on the outside? This tells you how many squares in that row or column are filled in and are connected to each other. Multiple numbers mean that there are multiple sections with at least one space in between. Once you fill out a puzzle, you get to see just what the shape you are making really is, and oh, look, it's cute. Geometry Wars. This one for sure has shapes in it. It's a twin-stick shooter where you fly around a box space and shoot at different geometric shapes. It starts you off slow so you can get the idea of how the game plays, and then it starts ramping up its enemy count. Another big part of this game is its particle effects. Did I mention particle effects? This game is honestly really pretty to look at, even if I go half blind from playing it. Its pick up and play nature lends to it being a really addicting game to lose yourself in. LUMINES was a puzzle rhythm game on the PSP where you place blocks on a playfield and combine the colors to make squares. The line scanning across the field will take out any squares you've made on the next time it passes over, and if you can keep eliminating a square at each pass, you start comboing. What really makes this game is its soundtrack. Each section of the playfield corresponds to its own beat, and each measure resets it back to the left side. I first played it through the remastered version when it released back in 2018. I love arcade puzzle games like this, and this one was no different. Come on, how can you hate squares? I hate squares. The world's hardest game is one of the most popular Flash games. The goal is to guide your red square through the level, collecting all the coins and reaching the checkpoints. The only problem is that this game gets hard. This game is the Super Meat Boy of squares. I never did manage to beat this game. I always gave up and went to play Wrath Wars, or even BLOXORZ is another popular Flash game. Instead of block and ball torture, this game is a puzzle game. You play as the Xbox Series X, and your goal is to roll yourself across the level to slip down the goal hole. You need to think about how you orient yourself as you move along. Standing tall, you weigh more and can break through platforms. Hang over an edge and you'll be falling off. It also tracks how many moves you make, so if you become an expert gamer, like myself, you can always try to go for the lowest amount of moves. The Impossible game first appeared on Xbox Live Arcade back in 2009 and received universal praise. It's a one-button platformer where you play as this red square as it hops through the levels, set to a great soundtrack. Impossible is right, since if you die, you get sent all the way back to the beginning of the level to try again. This game went on to influence another game on this list, which I will get back to. Why are these shapes making me cry? Thomas Was Alone is an indie game by Bithell Games about a group of shapes working together to get through levels. Each shape has its own unique abilities, such as length and height and jump height. Using the skills of everyone combined, you are tasked with overcoming whatever obstacles you face. As you play through the game, the narrator will describe what these shapes are really doing, and you begin to discover what's really going on. It's a short game. Steam says I completed it in about 4 hours. It's a fun game though, and the character given to these simple shapes is really compelling. I recommend giving it a look. Why is the world spinning? Super Hexagon is an indie game by the same creator of VVV, VVV, and Dicey Dungeons, with a soundtrack by Chipsel. You play as a triangle spinning around a hexagon as walls begin to close in on you. Your goal is to survive as long as you can, or for at least a minute, so you can unlock the harder versions of levels. It's easy to understand and has that same bite-sized gameplay burst like Geometry Wars. Just one more try. Okay, one more try. One more. This game went on to influence another game on this list, which I will get back to. Memories. Geometry Dash is the spiritual successor to the Impossible game. It too is a single-button platforming game, but Geometry Dash has evolved from Impossible game in a sense. While it's still single-button controls, there's more involved platforming here. You can go from platforming as a square, into reversed gravity, into flying all in one level. The game comes with 20 levels for you to play, but if that isn't enough, there's also tons of custom levels made with the game's level editor that you can try to master as well. And let me tell you, there are people definitely having a giggle watching people suffer through their levels. So those are most of the games that I wanted to take a look at. Video games about shapes have evolved over time, first limited by the capabilities of the hardware they were on, but then became more of a stylistic choice to continue with. A lot of these games, no matter the age, are still really fun to play. I think their simpler graphics mean that they can make up with having really fun gameplay. The music in a lot of these games are also really good. I'm over here jamming to these shapes. It seems like all you really need to make a fun game is just shapes and beats.